Welcome everyone to the CSPC Interview Series 2024. My name is Angeli Vasquez, I'm CSPC volunteer, and it's my pleasure today to interview Dr. Chad Gaffield. He is the CEO of U15 Canada. U15 is an association of 15 leading universities in Canada in research and innovation. The organization advocates for research excellence, national collaboration, and international leadership in science and innovation. Welcome, Dr. Gaffield.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
So I want to begin the interview asking you about U15 Canada. What is the role that the organization has played in informing science and research policies here in Ottawa?
Well, thank you for that question, and it's an important one since what we know is that the federal government policies and programs cannot be developed effectively without intimate knowledge and interaction with the larger ecosystem. So U15 Canada was created as sort of at the interface, at the nexus of federal policies and programs in the larger system. And our mission is to make all that work better for the benefit of Canadians.
Thanks. I like this answer because it brings me to the second question. And it's about the panel that U15 is organizing tomorrow, that it has to do with science in turbulent international landscapes. What you can tell us about Canada research in this international context? Do we stand in these critical times?
I think all of us know that living now in the 21st century has turned out to be kind of unexpected in many ways, and turbulent is often a word that comes to mind. The 21st century is not an extension of the 20th century. It's something quite different, but obviously there's continuity as well. And I think all our institutions, whether they're domestic or international, are really coming to grips with this. And one of the things I think is so interesting is that how the borders, the geopolitical borders of countries turn out to be very important. Not that long ago, we talked about globalization, and it was a sense in which the whole world was going to, in fact, be the Marshall McLuhan global village, and we would all be interacting and intertwined in ways and so on. But it turns out that where you are makes a difference. And we're in a 21st century now where domestic capacity and every country's ability to really support its science and research in terms of its economy, in terms of its social cohesion, the whole institutional structure and so on, is absolutely key. And so I think that's one of the most important kind of lessons of the 21st century, is that Canada must have that capacity itself, and building a science and research in Canada is absolutely essential.
I totally agree with you, and I wanted to ask you about it because you talk about the importance of local and the domestic science and research. So I wanted to ask how well prepared researchers in Canada are and how they can really face these international and turbulent moments that we are living now.
Well, the good news is, starting in the 90s, Canada decided to build an internationally acclaimed research and ecosystem. The idea was, I think, that Canada had passed from being a kind of a colony as late as the 1960s and had developed a good domestic capacity, but we were not really at the world level. And this is important because now domestic capacity to be really effective, productive, able to help your society, you need to be internationally connected. And so one of the things that's interesting is that in building our domestic capacity, we're doing so with other institutions like us. So for example, U15 Canada works very closely with the Russell Group in Great Britain, with the German U15. We work very well with the American Association of Universities, for example, the Group of 8 in Australia, Research Universities 11 in Japan, and so on. And I think it's that way it's almost T-shaped. In other words, you have to be very strong domestically, but you have to be internationally connected. Problems that are local generally have articulations at the global level, and you need to be able to address them at the same time. And I think working together, collaborating, is essential. Why we're so happy that we're partners with Horizon Europe now. I think those kind of research collaborations, and Canada is seen internationally now as a very desirable partner. So we're cautiously optimistic that in this turbulent times, we can in fact move forward using our allies internationally, confronting local problems at a level that recognizes that there are global connections.
Yes, and when you talk about local problems, I want to touch base on the federal budget for science that was announced this year, because we knew it was a problem that research in Canada was facing for many years. That was about funding, investment, work, and such. And the federal government announced a big investment for fellowships, grants, and also investment for the budget of the granting agencies. That it was very well taken in the community. Oh, I just wanted to ask, are there outstanding constraints in the capacity that researchers are facing now that can affect the investment of this big budget that was announced in this year?
It's a really good point, and I think I'm going to start on the constraint side for a second, because there are a few things going on. One is, we were talking earlier about the importance of domestic capacity, countries wanting to build up their science and research. But what that means is that it's a very competitive global landscape. The idea of Canada recruiting the best and brightest, attracting, retaining, and so on, we have to be able to do that in a competitive space. So there's definitely that side of competition. And so Budget 2024 was obviously great news. It sent a signal in Canada that Canada was serious about competing on the world stage, not letting a brain drain happen, losing our best and brightest, and so on. And it sent a message internationally that we've come to play. We want to help the world face global problems together, and we can bring really talented researchers. But there are many aspects of that that are complicated these days. One of the most important dossiers that we've been wrestling with is research security, for example. We know now that the world's geopolitical context of the world, it's a competitive space, and we have to protect ourselves. So we want to make our science open. We want to share it and so on, but we want to make sure that it is as secure as necessary at the same time. So we're working on that. We know, for example, that the global competition is going to keep increasing. And we know that we have to really stay focused on this in the 21st century. So there are structural issues where all of us, we know in the 21st century, there's new kinds of research. We talked in Budget 2024 about the need, for example, and the possibilities of generative AI and new forms of AI, ones that go beyond generative text-based AI. This is really important. So all our disciplines now are digital. We really have to compete. So this is not something that we can say, okay, we got some additional funding and we can't stop. No, this is always something that we must pay constant attention to, and remember that building a successful 21st century is really going to depend on advancing knowledge, developing talent, and sharing that in ways that help all sectors of society.
Yes, and I want to just mention about developing talent and AI, because we received also very good news this year about the Nobel Prize. A Canadian scientist, Dr. Jeffrey Hinton, he received the prize for his pioneering work in artificial intelligence. This is very important because also the federal government announced a big investment in AI, and the government says that this is a very big opportunity for Canadian researchers to strengthen the research in artificial intelligence. But this question I want to ask you is very, very interesting because it goes in two ways. How researchers can contribute to strengthen the artificial intelligence field, but at the same time, how the development in artificial intelligence is gonna also affect research, because now we know AI is everywhere, is affecting our lives, the things we do, and how that happens in the context of research.
The question of AI is so important because first it's a reminder that celebrating Geoffrey Hinton is also a chance to celebrate the fact that in the 1980s, Canada funded a type of research that at that time was not very popular at all. People were wondering, why is Geoff Hinton pursuing this connection between neural networks and computer science and so on? It was kind of a fundamental research that was not in the headlines, no one cared about it and so on. And here we are decades later with a huge industry and partly leading the world as a result of that work. So I think it's a reminder that whether it's AI or whatever the field is, we have to really encourage that fundamental research that's really opening the doors to these expected and unexpected developments later on. The second aspect of that that's so important is that the digital transformation that we are now seeing in terms of its recent articulation, AI, has been going on for a while. And Canada has played a central role. Early in the 1990s, for example, when it was talked about as the information highway and different sorts of expressions, Canada was playing a big role. When we had the first smartphones and so on, Canada was known internationally and so on. So there is a capacity here that we're now leveraging thanks to funding, thanks to initiative that go back quite a ways. Another aspect of this, which is so interesting, is to remember that this digital transformation has roots across all fields. My own field, I'm an historian. We started using, in my field, in the 1970s, building databases. And in fact, in the humanities, there was efforts and really innovative efforts to analyze text and so on as early as the late 1950s. And that became the origins of search engines and so on. So the digital possibilities for research, whether it's understanding the past, whether it's in attempting to analyze text and so on, all of those aspects, I think, are so important in terms of our understanding how pervasive the possibilities for AI are. It's not in any discipline, it's not in any type of business and so on, it's all over the place. But because Canada had strength across all disciplines, we have what I like to think about as the Canadian advantage. We have good awareness of the complexities of AI, not just in the technology, but in terms of the social, ethical, all the aspects of that. What is responsible AI? What is inclusive AI? And how can we use this for really the benefit of humanity in the health sector, in all different sectors? And this is not trivial, because as you know, AI is also being harnessed and being weaponized in very dangerous ways. And it has inherent potential in terms of bias, discrimination, basically a lot of very, very bad consequences that can happen at a very powerful level. Canada, I think, has the potential to help lead the world. In 2018, we had the Montreal Declaration in terms of a kind of responsible AI that was really important to us. We've created hubs. We have some significant funding for years now in terms of, and the recent budget 2024. So I think there's great possibility. Canada, I think, can still be a world leader, but it's going to take that development of talent. It's going to take that kind of robust focus that I think is appropriate to what is a pervasive development that reflects not only the technologies, but how the technologies affect us and how do we want to use them responsibly, inclusively, for the benefit of society.
To recall that we have been talking about all the actions Canada has been taking to move forward, to be leading in the AI on many of the fields in terms of science and research and innovation. But I want to finish the interview asking you about the federal elections that we will have next year. Because I know we think about the actions that needs to be taken in many of these sectors related to science and research, the steps we had to take to move forward. But we know that many of those things depend also on the political landscape. So US had the elections this year, this month actually. Canada is gonna have the elections next year. Some people anticipate drastic changes in the political landscape of Canada. And I wanted to ask from U15, from your organization, how you are anticipating and preparing for working on the science and research policy, making decisions according to the results of the political elections, and not just that, in general, the political changes that can come in the future.
Obviously, we are going to go through a transitional period that's already started. I'm an historian, so my reflex always is to look back. How has this worked in the past? And one of the very encouraging things is we can see since Canada began to develop a real research capacity, thanks to the federal government, especially in the 1960s and on, that support for science and research has really been present in every government. It's a nonpartisan activity. Sometimes at the beginning, that's not always clear when governments start, and that is a little bit on us in the sense of we don't often take the time to really share and invite people into our world and explain what we do and why we do it. How does peer review work? How's the independent assessment? How do we choose who gets funded? Why are the structures? What's the benefit of that? And so on. I think in many cases we're sometimes just doing our work and we don't realize that we can't just take this for granted. We're in a period where there are questions about all our institutions in all sorts of societies. Public opinion, faced with a lot of the challenges, is wondering how does this all work? So I always start with the prospect, and we've been obviously actively doing this, is to get to know each other, to listen and learn, to find out what are the priorities, what are the concerns, what are some of the perceptions, maybe misperceptions, and so on, and can't we share what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we see it fitting together, and then listen. Maybe there are better ways that this can happen, and so on. I don't think as researchers we're always learning, so we can't shut these doors. We want to avoid like crazy any implication that science and research is a partisan activity. Every government, every society, I think, that wants a better future is going to invest in it. And we can be part of the solution in terms of engaging, working together, and really optimizing the potential. It's going to be for the benefit of Canada, all citizens, all voters. And I think obviously it's going to involve work on our part, but from my point of view, it's work we should always be doing, whether or not there's an election on at all.
Yeah, thanks for the last words, because I agree with you. Science is about collaboration, community, and we had to move always forward no matter what happens. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.